Hi everybody, my name is Manal Rostom and you're watching Into the Depths.
I don't know what's gonna happen, but we're gonna be pushing through. We're gonna be pushing through the pain. I don't wanna let anybody down, and I don't wanna let myself down.
I'm the girl next door, like I'm an underdog.
I panicked through the night because of my breathing.
There's a lot of bullshit on social media. People don't show you the true side of every story. Wait! I was struggling with my hijab. You expect like, oh, she loves it. We don't always love it. I decided I wasn't gonna take it off and I was gonna create a social media platform to empower women and see if they're also struggling with their hijab. So my friend's like, why don't you write to Nike? I was like, are you mad? I asked a very blunt but open question, why isn't Nike Middle East catering for Muslim hijabi women? I got a reply next morning, great question, when can we meet? Facebook group has 1 million women and she said, I just want you to remember that you're taking 1 million hijabi women with you up to the top of the world. I'm not a quitter.
Well, Manal, thank you for joining us on this episode of Into the Depths. It's a real pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Thank you.
We're in Dubai now for Sail GP, and it's almost 6 months to the day since you stood on top of the world, climbing Everest and breaking a few records as you went. So what's your reflections? How do you feel about that journey?
I mean, honestly, the journey of recovery has been rough, I would say. I never realized that it would take me such a long time to understand what happened up there. You know, I thought I would come down and everything would be as normal as it was before I headed up to the Himalayas. But the journey was very bumpy, just understanding, dealing with a lot of, I would say, post-traumatic stress, from the mountain. Felt surreal at many times. I still get goosebumps, just watching the video of me at the top. I cry about it, because, when something has been in your mind and you were working towards for 15 years and then it happens and then the world is still going on after, it's like, what's next,
What is that feeling? How would you describe it?
Everest was very harsh. It was very painful, every sense of the word. It was painful emotionally, mentally. I know other people have it different, but I just felt like it was a very, very rough climb. And I struggled a lot. And I was very transparent on social media about it. I remember posting a video on May 9th. I never post drama online, never.
And if I quit, I'm gonna be letting myself down and everyone else down.
It was my first video crying on social media. It obviously went viral. The amount of love I received was insane. It was just me nicely telling people, this is what I look like, this is how I feel. Please forgive me if I don't make it. So when you shock yourself by actually making it, you just need time to digest. And I remember coming down and I remember telling my guide, I'm not posting about me summiting. I need a few days. But the word had gone out because I had informed the expedition leader. The expedition leader posted. He informed my dad. My dad posted it. It just went viral. I remember coming down feeling invincible, untouchable. But untouchable also in the sense that I don't want to talk to anybody, Yeah.
But then you had to sit in front of the world's media and talk about it. So how's that process?
So I came down in May and my dad said, you can't cocoon, there's no way, we've been working towards this goal. And I just said, I just need time. And I was very picky in the sense that I wasn't just doing any interview. I wanted to pick, TV personalities who would show care in the story, because I didn't want to be just a slot to fill. Let's talk about the dead people I saw. Let's talk about the trauma that I'm going to have to heal from. Let's talk about imposter syndrome, because I'm the girl next door. I'm an underdog, I can't do one pull-up, but I climbed Everest, And then when you're that kind of person and you see people putting you on a pedestal and you're like, did I deserve to stand on top of the world? I'm not sure, because there are definitely many people who are way stronger than me physically. But I would give my mental strength way more credit than I had ever given my mental strength,
What was the biggest thing that you learned about yourself in that journey, do you think?
I'm not a quitter. I remember when everything was just pointing towards me failing and turning around and not powering through. And because we were around 17 people on the expedition and 10 people dropped. And these people looked pretty strong to begin with, and they live in countries that are very mountaineering friendly. I'm talking France, I'm talking USA, and then comes Manal from the desert. But then she's weak and she's slow, but she keeps going. I don't feel like I'm the same since Everest. Yeah.
Wow. Maybe you can give us a brief summary of kind of what compelled you to do that in the first place, and then, what are the practical things that need to take place for you to get there, and also what was your experience of actually climbing Everest?
So I had to obviously build my mountaineering resume, of course, before Everest. I remember, first of all, in 2007, when I found out that there's an Egyptian guy who summited Everest, and he was the first Egyptian. I remember watching him on TV and telling my dad, "Oh my God, I'd love to do that one day." He said, "You're not a boy to do that." So I said, "Yeah, I'm aware I'm not a boy. I'm 27 years old. I'm already, I know, And then it took me 5 years to convince my dad of how safe I could be potentially if I take up mountaineering as a sport. 5 years. I swear to God, it was straight on 5 years of sending him articles or interviews with other people. He's like, "No, you're not a boy. What will people say? Where's my daughter? Climbing what mountain?" And then in 2012, I was like, you know what? I'm 32 years old. I'm doing Kilimanjaro. Kilimanjaro is hard. The summit day is death, But then I came down and I saw the level of pride that, my friends and family had. And my dad shifted from, "You're not a boy," to, "Oh, by the way, my daughter climbed the highest mountain in Africa." But then it became a thing. I was like, you know what? I'd like to try this again. When I did Elbrus, which is the highest mountain in Europe, in Russia, when we summited Elbrus, I came down and I said, I would love to be the first Egyptian woman to climb Mount Everest. Again, it was just such a far-fetched dream, So I did base camp in 2016. 2017, I attempted Aconcagua in Argentina, failed. The weather was terrible. We had to turn around. 2018, I did Mont Blanc as the first Egyptian woman. I didn't know. Hi, everyone. This is Egypt representing on top of the Alps, Mont Blanc. I made it. People who weren't following me, they thought I just went from zero to hero.
Yeah.
No, I've been building up my resume for many, many years. Everest itself is interesting because it takes about 6 weeks. You trek for 10 days, you reach base camp, and then it's that's the real thing. And then you have to go through rotations. So rotations basically prepare the body for their ability to withstand altitude. It's just a piece of hell, and then you have to wake up in the middle of the night because you want to climb before the sun is out, because if the sun is out, everything's going to start melting and the risk of avalanche. So you're constantly stressed.
And tell us about the summit push. Tell us what you experienced, what's different about Everest? Why is it seen as the ultimate?
Everest, first of all, let's keep the financial aspect, because everyone's like, yeah, but it's so expensive. That's why people are not doing it. That's not true. The reason why people are not doing Everest is because it's brutally long. Who is able to take 2 full months outside your family, your friends, your work, living in a tent for 2 months? I'm sorry, but shitting in a hole, peeing in a hole for 2 months, not getting my fingernails manicured. I'm a female. I was like, you know what? I'm going to spoil myself crazy once this is over. So all these little things. And then there's the compatibility with the team. I didn't feel like I got along with my team members. I didn't know anybody. I'm the butterfly, the social butterfly. I want to talk to anyone. Nobody would talk to me. And I just felt always left out. I remember walking into the tent and, "Good morning, everyone." No one would reply. And I'm like, "Good morning, everyone. Good morning." And I would sit and cry in my tent to my guide. So this took also a toll on me. I would get questions like, "So where are you from?" I would say Egypt. They're like, "What language do they speak in Egypt?" And I'm like, "We speak Arabic, bro." And then I also would get questions like, "Do you climb?" So that part was really difficult. And then having to just I didn't take any pills to stop my period. I'm also very open about this. I thought, our bodies as females are made to menstruate monthly. They're not made to climb 8,000 meter peaks. And you should not mess with your hormones. This sport is selfish in general. You can't be more selfish by stopping your time of the month. So it was horrible. Oh my God. I would be I feel oh my God, I think I'm dying. In camp 2, before you start using your oxygen, it felt like death. Because, the air is starting to get thin. It's at 6,500 meters above sea level. The air is starting to get really thin. It's really cold and you can't breathe. So I started using the oxygen mask. It was a little bit like anxiety inducing because you feel like it's scuba, right? And when you reach Camp 4, you feel like you're on the moon because you literally see Everest is just like literally on top of you. And you don't need to be wearing a helmet anymore because there's no icefall. I remember calling my parents and I'm like, this is it. And my dad's like, so are you going to spend the night up there? I was like, what? Up there? No, we're just going to tag it and come down, you know? Summit night was interesting because it was a full moon. And I was just in a really good headspace. Like everything was great until I reached what they call the balcony at 8,600 meters. I panicked really bad to the point where my guide said, if you don't pull yourself together, I'm turning you around. Then you have to push.
And then you push and you reach the summit, finally, and what do you feel?
Nothing.
How? How is that possible?
So basically, I mean, honestly, that's like just like the saddest part of the story. Like, I remember, and I hope I don't get emotional, but you know, like from the balcony, I reset my mind and I was like, you're going to ruin this with your attitude. I was actually reading a book at the time called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Because sometimes, you know, you keep reacting and showing the same behavior in different scenarios and you get the same exact outcome. So when you break the habit of being yourself, that's when you really change the outcome of every scenario. And that book helped me a lot to understand what was happening at that particular moment. I had a conversation with God and I'm like, you have not brought me this far to kill me. So I became an autopilot from 8,600 meters all the way to the top to around 8,800 meters until you come to the, you know, the rocky ridge, Hillary Sep, where you come face to face with dead bodies. And at that moment, you just feel like, wow, what is this about? It's ego. And it made me feel sad. Why would we drive our bodies like and our lives, you know, to this ending? And you don't just like see them from afar. They're lying right underneath you. And I remember just like freezing at the moment. And it's like one by one who has to go. And my guy's like, you need to move. And I'm like, you need to give me a moment. And you just have to cross over. And it was the scariest thing I've ever done. Because it's like, I just felt like if I had inched, you know, a tiny little inch, I could have touched that man. And then you reach the top of the world.
I just became the first Egyptian woman to stand on top of the world.
I remember looking around and I'm like, okay, I can't see anything. Like I expected to see like the whole world or something, you know, because you're standing on top of the world. I expected to see like little countries and, you know, or like a little mini globe. But I just couldn't believe it. And we took the videos and I just had a moment where I just looked around and I'm like, you know, there's a center where there's all the flags, but it was so crowded. I didn't even want to wait for my chance to go and, can you believe it? I remember one of my friends said, don't forget to remove your goggles and remove your mask so your face shows. If you had given me $1 million to remove my goggles or my mask, I would not have moved anything. No way. It's like so scary. I was scared for my life.
Maybe you weren't as present as you would like to have been in that moment, but it sounds like you actually underwent quite a spiritual experience that most people don't get to face in their lives.
I gave myself around 30 seconds to be present, just for me I was like in my head, Manal, you're standing on top of the world. I actually said that in my head, Manal, you're standing on top of the world. And I said a little prayer because, you know, we believe that you're so up close to the sky and the seven heavens or whatever. So it's like I just made a little prayer, you know, for myself and my family. And I looked around and I remember getting a thought like, you're not ever coming back here. Do what you got to do before you go down. I remember my guide said, we need to call the expedition leader. That's how they found out because they have the satellite phone and the walkie-talkies. So he talks and he says, Manal Rostom, summit, 6:30 a.m., you know? So Mike answers back, "Congratulations, guys! Oh my God!" And then my guy says, "Do you want to speak to him?" I was just looking, you're just like, you're not in the mood. You don't want to talk to nobody. It's like you're literally in your own moment. And then I said, "Hi, Mike, I made it. I'm the first Egyptian woman." And he said, "Manal, you don't give yourself enough credit." And I just won't ever forget that line, because I just really feel like, as underdogs and as kids who grew up thinking that they might never reach something, like such a big dream. Like, this is the ultimate dream for any mountaineer. And it just like meant everything, that just one liner. I was like, damn, like I need to start giving myself more credit.
Obviously, it sounds like personally it was an incredible life-defining experience in some respects, but also what you did inspired millions of other people. So how does that make you feel, that you've achieved something that other people can look up to and aspire to?
Actually, again, referencing that video when I was posting myself like crying, and I wasn't looking for sympathy or empathy or anything like that. I was just trying to show them the real Everest, because I'm sorry, like I feel like there's a lot of bullshit on social media right now. Like people don't show you the true side of every story. So me posting that video, I wanted to show them what challenging meant, and what my face looked like, and what my emotional state was like, what my mental state was like. It's not a joke. Like, and they say, oh, it's for the rich. No, it's not just for the rich. It's for the tough-minded souls who have goals and who have dreams and who fight really hard for them against all odds. That's what Everest is about. So, I run a women's only community, Surviving Hijab, and my own personal following on social. The amount of love and support I received was just insane. And people started saying things like, "Don't worry, we're all climbing with you. Please remember, you're not alone." You know how many times people said that? And I remember one girl, her name is Huda. She texted me and she said, "Manal, I just want you to remember," because our Facebook group has 1 million women. And she said, "I just want you to remember that you're taking 1 million hijabi women with you up to the top of the world." And I was like, oh my God, the pressure, like taking 1 million women up like on my shoulders. Like I'm already just like fighting, to make it myself. But then you really understand, John, that despite everyone saying that it's a selfish sport, it is a selfish sport, but it stops being about you and about what you represent and what you stand for and what you would like to be remembered for and how you'd like to inspire the next generation of little kids. Like I remember little kids, boys and girls, by the way, not just girls. They would text me, they're like, "Miss Manal, please try to make it. We'd love to see you on top." And I'm like, oh my God, like this is serious. So I'm so thankful for that over dramatic video that I posted, even though I'm never posting anything like that again in my life. This is what really made me feel like what I was doing was not just a personal goal. It was the goal of many kids, many females, many hijabis, many men as well, who lived their dream through my eyes by helping me mentally and emotionally reach the top. I just like to take this opportunity to thank everyone who's followed me and giving me their support, whether by liking or just sending a message. It really, really helped me.
Do you think, being really open and authentic, like in that video, is that necessary if we actually want to drive change? Because if you sanitize everything, does it ever actually make an impact or can it drive change in society or in perceptions of how people see?
You know what? I just want people to not be afraid to show vulnerability. I was brave, and not just because I was climbing Everest. No, I was brave to say that I'm struggling to climb Everest. And I was also saying that I'm slow. And a lot of people are like, oh my God, like my ego, I was not over dramatizing the situation, but I just wanted to show the real side of what climbing an 8,000 meter peak was like.
I want to move on a little bit to the work you've done with Nike. Maybe start from the beginning of that story. I read that you took a really bold step and sent off a letter or an email, I guess.
Yeah.
Probably not really expecting a reply, right? What made you send that email?
So in 2014, I was struggling with my hijab. So, for people who are not aware of what hijab is, it's a compulsory form of worship. So every woman needs to embrace the hijab, like to cover up, like cover hair, cover her body, so for modesty. But then in 2014, when I had moved to Dubai, as you see, Dubai is very cosmopolitan. I was also standing out. I was moving from Kuwait to Dubai. Kuwait, Dubai, very different. So I just feel like I don't fit in, and it makes me nervous and makes me stressed out. So I wanted to remove my hijab when I was 34 years old. I remember going and telling my dad, like, I want to remove my hijab. He said, I never told you to wear it. I will never tell you not to take it off. Take it off. So I said, really? Like, where you're not going to fight with me, disown me, blah, blah, blah. So long story short, I decided I wasn't going to take it off, and I was going to create a social media platform to empower women and see if they're also struggling with their hijab, struggling to fit in, struggling at the airport, struggling at security, because all of these things are actually happening. So the group went viral. We went from 70 people that I added by hand to 40,000 women a few months later. And it was like a Me Too movement, because the name is very controversial, because you expect like, oh, she loves it. We don't always love it. Like, I feel today I'm having a good hijab day because I feel like I like how I put my hijab together. But there are days when everything is just like windy and doesn't match, and like you go to somewhere and you're not allowed to go in. So the group gained a lot of traction, So I was chatting with my friend. I was like, what do we do? Like, wow, I was like, I am an accidental leader, and all these women thanking me for creating this hub and coming out and saying, oh, me too. Like, I also had this problem and I also don't like it. So this is the idea I was born. I was like, I don't see someone, an athlete, hijabi, or a girl who is an athlete who wears a hijab, being like representing an international brand. So my friend's like, why don't you write to Nike? I was like, are you mad? Like, who am I to write to Nike? I don't even have an Instagram account. What have you got to lose? I'm sure you know someone who can connect you to the management team. So I put one and one together. I was like, wait a second. I do know someone who knows someone. And I wrote a very respectful email. And I introduced myself. I attached a few photos of me, a link to my group. And I just said, I asked the very blunt but open question, why isn't Nike Middle East catering for Muslim hijabi women? Isn't it about time? And I went to sleep. I was like, who do you think you are? Like, what is this? Like, where's this energy coming from? I was talking to myself. I got a reply next morning, one-liner. And he said, Manal, great question. When can we meet? I was like, wait, what? This is happening? 3 months later, I became the first ever hijabi to be featured in a Nike Middle East campaign. They put me in the lead, running in front of Burj Khalifa. But I wouldn't give credit for myself. I would give credit for my community and the power of our voices and collective voices to create change. That's what the story was all about. Series of events that happened after that were crazy. Based on my fitness certifications, I was hired as their first ever Nike Run Club coach here in Dubai to coach the women's only team, first of its kind, women's only run club, led by a hijabi. And everyone was like, what a story. Nike's hiring hijabis. And then I get invited to represent the Middle East at Nike Portland in Oregon. I remember the marketing director, he called me one day and he's like, Manal, you have to come to my office today. I have something to show you that will potentially change your life. So I go to the office and he pulls out a Nike Pro hijab, and he's like, you're gonna model that. I was like, what? Nike had got inspired by the lack of representation, and they wanted to help these girls out. We had no performance gear up until 2017. Imagine,
It's crazy.
It's
crazy to think.
And I remember also, there were a lot of people like, oh, but why is it such a big deal? Like, local brands have been supporting hijab. I was like, yes, we understand that, but where's the international representation? Where's the international support, that we deserve as hijabi athletes? And I remember, so up until May 2017, the International Federation of Basketball, FIBA, were banning Muslim hijabi athletes from participating in championships. So I would get little girls, 20-year-old, to talk to me on Facebook, send me a message saying, I just made it to the championship, but I'm not allowed to participate because of my hijab. Should I take off my hijab or should I quit basketball? Why is this even a question? How is this even sane? And I would say, listen, don't quit your sport. Don't take off your hijab. Fight for your place to coexist with these athletes. That's what I would always say. And May 2017, FIBA lifted the hijab ban on hijabi athletes, and they used my photo from the modeling campaign for the Nike Pro Hijab to make the announcement. And it was just like, I was like, yes, you know, that's the collective power of community. Everybody who just like stood up finally and said, we need to coexist. So
I mean, some people go into politics or business and they try and drive change that way, but you know, you're in this sport, you're using the power of sport essentially to inspire people. Why is sport so powerful? You know, SailGP putting females on board every boat. Why does that matter? You know, why is it important to get that representation?
I believe that sport is an international language. Like, you know, if you're a runner and I'm a runner, we immediately have something in common. Like, we will click, but we are sort of like practicing the same language by practicing the same sport. I feel it's just like it's so powerful because of the messages behind the sport. Like, for example, I took up my Surviving Hijab flag to the top of Everest, and that was my message. Like, you know, for every hijabi girl who was told that she shouldn't or wouldn't or couldn't, humiliated, banned, discriminated against, this was our moment. You know, like God managed to put a hijabi on top of the world. And I just felt like this is why this matters, because for the rest of my life, if anyone says, oh, a hijabi can't do one thing, you know, just because she covers her head, I'm like, I climbed to the top of the world and I took my community with me. You know, don't ever label us based on, you know, a piece of cloth or the way that we practice faith, you know. And I feel that's the power of sports, and that's what sports can do. It's community. It's an international language. So,
big question: what's next? What's next for Manal Rostom? What's next for Surviving
We're gonna
Hijab?
go check out SailGP. That's what's next. Honestly, like I remember coming down from Everest, and people were already like. You know, like commenting on my post from Everest, like, yeah, so what's next? What's next? And I feel like right now, because of social media and because we have massive exposure to what everyone else is doing, you constantly feel like you're rushed. You got to be doing something. So I decided, and I just like announced to everyone in May 2022, I said, I'm taking time to recover. And I did exactly that. And now, like 6 months on, I just feel like there's a question that I expect you to ask me, but you didn't ask me. But I'm going to give you another chance. But let me just answer this question and give you another chance. I do want to finish the 7 summits, like all the highest mountains on every continent. I'm running Tokyo in March 2023. But on a bigger like vision, it's I would love to finish the 7 summits before I turn 45. So I have like 2 more years, I think. Yeah.
Awesome. What was the question you expected? Go on.
I expect you to ask me if I would do Everest again.
What's the answer?
I would do it again.
You'd do it again?
Yeah. Knowing what I know about myself now. Because remember when you asked me about being present and everything, I'd love to do Everest and enjoy it and not be so stressed out and scared of the ice fall and worried if I don't make it and, you know, thinking twice about what will people say if I fail, you know. I'd love to reattempt or redo Everest. But being at ease, you know, with everything and not caring whether I'm shitting in a hole or like peeing in a hole or not showering for God knows how long, you know, but I would do Everest again.
Well, I think we need to make a move because we're going to go and check out SailGP.
Okay, amazing.
SailGP's in Dubai for the first time ever. Mm-hmm. How excited are you to go and check out these insane boats?
Honestly, when they contacted me, I thought it was like spam. I was like, I didn't think they really wanted me. And I was like, did you really mean like you want to talk to me and get me to experience this? Because I think it's like fascinating. So it's such a fascinating sport. And it's not very common in the region at all. And then they mentioned there are going to be like female sailors, which is like, wow, I'm just like dying to meet them and meet the team and experience the thrill and adrenaline. And I don't know, who knows, like maybe we'll start our own little SailGP MENA region, you know, like, or Middle East. Yeah.
We'll get Anne-Marie to show you around the boat and you can see how you feel. See if you feel at home on there.
Yeah, I'm very excited to meet her.
Nice. Thank you, Manal. Great chat. Really enjoyed it. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Wow, this is incredible.
is amazing. Check this out. I've never felt anything like it. I've never seen anything like it. And who knows, maybe I'm gonna become a sailor one day.